When the Bowler EXRS erupted onto the scene in 2010 at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, it must have felt somewhat disenfranchised. There it was, sitting amongst the supercars that dominate this market. After its first run up the hill, however, their laurels were well and truly unrested when it embarrassed many of the globe's staple supercars without so much of a whiff of perspiration. Little did Bowler know at the time, they'd inadvertently built a car that was more relevant today than ever. A car in a niche as narrow as this one surely has no place in the wearied, agonising and socially aware year we'd all love to forget known as 2020. Or does it? Now, not to get too dramatic, but if the world all gets a bit too Book of Eli for you, then the EXRS might not actually be so ridiculous after all.
Now, Bowler is famed for their rally raid cars. There's no doubt that those vehicles are absolutely insane. They are 100% built for a purpose, and that is to traverse and contend with only the harshest of environments. Events like Baja Aragon, Dakar, you may have heard of, 500 to 600 miles a day. Nothing like what I'm dealing with today, so we should be all right. However, the EXRS was launched in 2010. It is a road-going version. So we've got number plates, we've got indicators, I've even got air conditioning, which I might add isn't great. Initial reaction, the noise is savage. Get a load of this. Absolutely unbelievable. 0 to 60 is a blistering 4.2 seconds. It's winding out 550 horsepower, 750 newton meters of torque. Now that is plenty. I've not found myself wanting for any more today, I can assure you. The weight, it's, should we say it's sort of middle of the ground, 1730 kilos? It doesn't feel like it. This is one of only 6 cars, so every single car is bespoke. The car I'm in today is actually chassis number 1. So this is the first one, the first road car, I should say, that Bowler ever produced. The owner very, very kindly lent us the car today from Henry's car barn. He's had 2 of these things. He had chassis 2, which just through circumstances and just choices was just busy and decided to sell it. And thought it was an enormous mistake. He was browsing the classifieds, if you will, and found chassis 1, and here it is. He's got it back, and it looks absolutely incredible. The striking green colour is Verde Hydra. Now that is a Lamborghini colour. Henry, the owner, he had an Aventador S in that colour, and thought, you know what, I think that would work. The car only came back from the paint shop 2 days ago, and here we are, smashing it around on the roads, and he seems okay with it, so I'm okay with it. The atmosphere in here, amongst the heat, is just something else. Looking around the cabin, we've got a few telltale signs that it's based on a Range Rover Sport. Got a pretty standard Land Rover steering wheel. Apart from that, not much else. It's absolutely draped in exposed carbon, and that isn't helping for the NVH, but it's not really an issue. You can probably see from the images it's a little bit shorter. It's got completely bespoke suspension. We've got bespoke spring rates, Bilstein dampers with, you won't believe me when I say this, 11 inches of wheel travel. Did I mention the noise? Did I mention the noise? Well, let's talk a little bit about the hardware, shall we? So the car is based on a Range Rover Sport chassis. That's what it starts life out as, and then Bowler take what they like, the bits they don't like, throw it out, and it's pretty much bespoke from there. It's a hydroform chassis, suspension is completely bespoke, tuned for the road. It is a little bit more compliant than some of the competition cars, as you'd expect, but still, my God, it feels raw. It feels raw. I can feel everything here. And I'm not talking about steering feel, that's pretty void, but I can feel everything that's going on in the road here. The only way I can describe it is just the definition of freedom. I feel like I could just point this thing in any direction and it would take me there, no matter what stood in its way. Like this, it really needs a lot of room, and thankfully we've got plenty of it today over at Henry's car barn. We've just got fields and fields to do pretty much whatever we want in. The handling is by far the most surprising attribute of the car. It's so much more neutral than I expected it to be, and I'm having to work really quite hard to get the car turned in. So I'm setting the car up at least 50 metres before the corner. Now, it's in no way unpredictable at all. And actually, once you get to grips with it and understand what the car needs from you, there's just no limits. That's at 80 miles an hour. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty confident that I couldn't keep my glass of champagne still in here, but you know, we're kind of missing the point here. And even if things do get slightly out of hand and a bit sideways, you've always got 750 Newton meters of torque to drag you out of any kind of situation. I'm probably looking a bit red-faced now, and I am. God forbid there's a hair out of place. I'm having to work really quite hard here, but my God, is it fun. If anyone feels like they've been clapped in irons during the lockdown and they've got a spare £155,000, get yourself a Bowler.
After fighting the EXRS all day, I stood graciously in defeat with my head bowed. If I was to pick fault with one thing, it would be the 50-50 torque split. It would have benefited being slightly more biased to the rear. This is just personal preference, of course. I suspect, however, on proper off-road tyres the front axle wouldn't have struggled so much. It was difficult to draw comparisons to anything I've possibly driven before. When presenting these thoughts to Henry, it transpired we both settled on the same conclusion. There is nothing to compare it to. There's nothing the world needs less than the EXRS. But to anyone that's felt incarcerated over the previous few months, I prescribe you one full dose of Bowler. Should you ever need to traverse harsh terrain at race car pace, or simply travel as the crow flies when the traffic gets a bit much, you might just make way for all of its outrageousness after all.